Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Del. Good. Staying dry.
Yes, we're just chatting. We've had some rain here in California, a much needed rain.
Yes, that rare thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was just saying to you, Barry, you mentioned something a few weeks ago, and it was just in passing, but I can't quite remember what show it was, but you mentioned something like an eye for an eye. And it had got me thinking that, that is really a dynamic that happens in a lot of relationships where one person has felt really hurt or slighted, and but I'll just use the example of, say, your partner cheated on you or something, and you feel like, well, I'm going to go and cheat on them, show them how it feels. But I mean, there can be more minor things for sure, but it's a very natural response to have when we're in incredible amounts of pain, is to want our partners or our friends or our family or whoever we're in relationship with to really know what that feels like, to feel that depth of pain and sorrow and lack of trust and all of those things that come with that violation. But the thing is, in the Buddhist story of, like, when we hold on to that, lump of burning coal that we want to throw at another person, we're the ones that are burning ourselves. And I know it sounds trite, but really often the people that have hurt us have moved on. They're not thinking about what they've done. Some of them never thought about what they'd done. In their minds, they've justified it and thought it was okay. So when we hold on to resentment or anger and we want to retaliate, or an eye for an eye, or level the playing field, whatever phrases you want to use, and we're holding on to that, we are really just hurting ourselves. We're reliving that moment. The first time something happened was absolutely, you were innocent of being taken advantage of or violated or whatever it was. But after that, when we constantly keep going back there, I know we can't stop our minds going there, but we do have a little bit of free will as to how long we want to hang out in those places, how long we want to marinate in those feelings, because that's what we're feeling every second of every day. Is we're feeling our own feelings. We're not feeling what the other person did to us. We're feeling our own feelings about what the other person did to hurt us.
That's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of pieces to this, so I'm going to throw a couple more onto the table as well. The thing is that, first of all, what our mind tends to do is not in charge. We forget oftentimes, think that what our mind's thinking is the truth or the way things are, and we go along with it. But if you notice that you're noticing what you're thinking, obviously you are not what you're thinking. So first of all, you can take a step back and go, hang on a second, what is it I'm thinking right now? Because that's the thing that we forget to do, is take a moment to step back from the blindly doing action into the, what if I want to do something different? So it's one piece of detachment methodology. The other part we'll talk to, though, is that, I believe this, it may not be the truth, but I feel it's the truth, is oftentimes our ego wants to be right. And when somebody's wronged us, especially a partner, intimate relationship partner, there's a part of us that is driven to make them wrong so we can be right at whatever cost it's going to be. So that thing about, an eye for an eye idea is because what they did, they may be oblivious to, but we aren't. And so we start feeling like we have to have some sort of revenge to justify what they did as wrong so we can feel right about it. So it's a whole right-wrong balancing scale, so to speak. And neither one of us wins. We know this because we talked about this quite a bit. So the idea, as you said, that to be able to step back or to have detachment enough or to start to see how the other person's feeling is a step towards having a centered response. Of course, it requires consciousness and presence, of course, to do this.
It's really interesting you say that, because that's not the first thing that would occur to me. I often think it's, when it is a situation where it really is an eye for an eye, like, you did this action to me, I'm going to do the same action to you. I don't know how somebody could actually say, well, that makes me right. It's usually, for me, the motivation to say, now do you get how I feel? Now do you understand the depth of whatever that was? So it's usually that sort of, because we need to be seen, heard, and valued and understood, and
Well,
have what was that?
I was saying the thing about it is that the framing in the head, of course, is if you love me, you wouldn't hurt me. Is the
Yes.
wiring we have inside. So absolutely,
Hmm.
there's the desire to get to prove to them that what they did hurt us, so we
Hmm.
can feel better. So
Yeah.
so I guess what I'm saying about that thing about ego being right, there is a part of us that wants to make sure that we make sure our partner knows how we feel, because in a way
Hmm.
that does validate what we feel.
Yeah.
So there is that part of it too. But definitely the challenge is how do we stop trying to make everybody suffer because of something we feel.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, have you
Yes.
ever wanted like an eye for an eye? Have you ever wanted like revenge? Have you ever wanted to just get your ounce of flesh from somebody that the reason I'm bringing this up, I have to share. I shared a story last night. I was at a party and I shared the story, and this guy went, "Oh, you have to talk about that on the podcast. It's really." So I'll let you go first. You share a story, then
Oh,
I'll.
okay. You'll hold back on your juicy story for me to go before you,
I
huh?
can go ahead now. I'm fine with it. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
Well, just to be transparent, I have not. I'm just scanning through my history. I'm
Yeah.
not aware of relationships where there was a cheating involved. First of all, so that's one thing off the table in terms of that sort of thing. However, what I do know, and this is something I'm aware of as well, is that in past relationships years ago, when my partner did something that upset me, that I chose to let them upset me. That's the whole thing about responsibility, by the way.
Hmm.
I would shut down and not be loving because I was going to make them suffer because of the fact that they hurt me. So I was going to not give any love or affection to them. So it wasn't the same reaction for me, but it was kind of the thing where I was going to close them out and make them feel in my head, make them feel bad because they hurt me. So I'm not going to give them any sense of kindness or affection or love. So they'll realize what they did wrong, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
that was the justification I was using. I didn't go back and do the same thing to them they did to me, but it's something not much better.
Yeah. Passive aggressive. I'm going to shut you
Exactly.
out, squeeze you out.
I definitely had, yes, that's the
Yeah.
word term.
Well, it's so funny actually when I'm thinking about it. The example I was going to give actually wasn't. Again, it really wasn't an eye for an eye. It wasn't a you did this to me, so I'm going to do the same to you. But what it
Okay.
was people are going to think I'm a right idiot here. Because I think a few weeks ago we
Come on.
talked.
We teach from our mistakes. It's okay to have mistakes we've made.
Exactly. So anyway, as some of you know, I got hacked a few weeks ago, and we talked about feeling violated and everything. And then what it reminded me of was a time about I don't know, maybe about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. My website, the credit card ended, and so there was a lapse in payment on my domain name, my website. And there is somebody out there in the world, and he has a name which I've forgotten, and I'm not going to give him any credit anyway, who intentionally buys people's names or their websites with their names.
I've
And
heard about this.
especially if they are a coach or a therapist or a pediatrician or anything that is in the world of being trusted, being seen as somebody that like I said, that you can trust and believe in. And then he swoops in legally. This is all completely legally, and
Hmm.
he takes your name, and then he contacts you and says, "I would like $20,000 for you to get your name back, because right now I've got a porno site on your name." And I was like, "No way!" So I went, I checked, and yes, none of my content was on there, but there was this pretty racy porno site on it. So I looked it up, and this man does this. I called, the domain people. I think it was GoDaddy at the time or something like that. And I said, "How can this happen?" And they said, "Because your name lapsed. We sent you an email, but unfortunately, he swooped in. He keeps an eye on these things, and swoops in and does this." Anyway, I looked him up, and it showed that he made a living doing this. But there were a few cases where he was taken to court and lost. The judge was just like, "You're despicable," and you
Okay.
know. So I contacted him and I just said, "Listen, I've done my research. I've seen that you've lost these cases, but I also realize it's going to cost me a couple of thousand to hire a lawyer and take you to court and things. So how about we settle for 2,000, and I give you a piece of my mind. And he said yes. So I gave him 2,000, and I told him what an absolute scumbag I thought he was, and that he really needed to reevaluate his life and how he made money. And but it was so funny. I mean, I was sharing it last night, and people were laughing, going, "Oh, that is just too funny." But it was just yeah, I mean, normally I play safe, and I'm like, oh, make sure, because he could have turned around and said, no, I'm not even going to give it to you for that. But you know what? 2,000 was 2,000 to him, and he absolutely had such a barrier that it didn't matter what I said. It didn't penetrate. It didn't
Yeah.
matter. He knew who he was, and he knew that he was making money at it, and he was fine with it. So it was a futile attempt on my end to level the playing ground, to feel like I wasn't completely taken advantage of. But again, that's just a silly side story. But when we do it within relationships, an ongoing relationship, and we play that tit for tat, and we do the you wounded me by cheating, I'm going to cheat on you, or you wounded me when you embarrassed me, I'm going to embarrass you, or you put me down, I'm going to put you down. That type of tit for tat, it just erodes at the what I call the bank of goodwill that's in a relationship.
Right.
And it seems so innocent at times, like name calling and things like that, but it chips away. It just chips away. And, there's only so, unless you're putting those deposits of love and appreciation and all of those things into that bank account of goodwill, and you live in this space of, well, he did it to me, so I can do it to him, vice versa. It's just, you're just living in a whole other cyclical negativity.
That's the thing that I mean, Jesus was quoted as saying, turn the other cheek type idea. But people seem to think that means you get, what's what I'm looking for, steamrolled.
Hmm.
If you do turn the other cheek, like it's like you've been smacked once, turn the other cheek, get smacked again. It's like, no.
Hmm.
My interpretation of it, and I'm not a biblical scholar, so just bear in mind that I'm not coming from like, this is the way the truth. But my perception of it is that when somebody does that, where they do affront you by something like stealing your domain, whatever that is, or hijacking your domain, is the choice point becomes you can stay in the wounding and be in the same cheek being hurt, which means you still feel um, wounded, abused, challenged, whatever that is, or you turn the other cheek, which to me means you have a fresh approach where you see what's going on and you do it from a more what's the one looking for, self-supportive way. Because the thing is, yes, taking action in response to this hacker, this I'll be polite, less than mature person who was scamming to get money. There are different ways of approaching. One of which is to lay down and pay the fee and be screwed over completely. One of which is to do what you did, which is to do a negotiated deal. And then the total eye for an eye would have been to find ways to hack his stuff and take him down and knock him down and show him the pain and everything, that sort of thing.
Oh,
Which
that
may
would have
be
taken
more
too much effort.
right, but see the thing. Some people. I'm just want to illustrate that point. Is that some people buy into the paradigm so much that they have to do this to satisfy themselves that the amount of effort they invest in it becomes way more than is needed, and also is a higher price to pay ultimately than what they would have done if they'd done something in the middle. So
Yeah.
what you did in terms of settling was not giving up. It was about this is the wisest choice to get justice for what I want and to get back on track. Screw that. I mean, screw the person. Let them go away. They're done.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's the choice. There's different ways of responding, and one of which is the eye for an eye approach, which is I'll make sure that his business is kicked down and murdered like you did to mine, sort of thing, which is total revenge. And
Hmm.
that's the thing. There's the thing that goes on with revenge porn or revenge.
Yeah.
Where basically some people post images of their exes to make them look bad, sort of thing.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is a whole topic. Absolutely. That's so, um, gosh, you've got to be really angry to be doing things like that. You are
But
really not moving on with your life
right.
if you're doing things like that.
But again, the choice point is, either there's extremes of doing nothing and trying to do exactly the opposite, same as the other person to prove them wrong, which means you sort of, it's like the idea of, talking about the difference of between empathy and sympathy is this concept is that, empathy is, sorry, sympathy is seeing someone in a hole and throwing down a rope and then jumping in after him. It's like you just jump in the pit and make the same mess, which is what that sort of revenge action is. With empathy, it's the idea is that you stay at a higher place, you stay in a higher ground, and you do your best to offer support to them, but you don't enable them. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess the thing is with this idea of being because we don't do eye for an eye, is you basically stay in the high ground, so to speak, and you have a position where you can offer, request, ask for some sort of stop doing that type thing,
Yeah,
but you
and
don't get center by it. Say
and
again?
amends, asking for
Yeah,
somebody to show that they have some
some
recognition of what
contrition.
they did yeah, exactly, contrition, that what they did was actually hurtful and harmful. And no, I mean, when we do get into that sort of it's so funny going back to what you said at the beginning about um yeah, inside us all, we all sort of want to feel that we are better than, in a way. And the
Hmm.
one way to feel better than is to take the high ground and is not to sink to somebody else's level and not get in the mud and sling mud at somebody else. I mean, if you really do, I mean, what is it, Michelle Obama's when they go low, we'll go high. It is
Right.
there's something soothing to know that even under sort of a really stressful situation, that you were responsive, not reactive, and that you took the high road, and that you took care of yourself, but you didn't, as we say, sink to that level of getting in the dirt with somebody or in the mud with somebody. Um,
Right.
yeah, and it's so sad. It also speaks to living in the past. I
Hmm.
mean, it's like these things have been and done. They've happened. They've gone. And if we hold on to that wanting to get revenge, we are 100% not in the present moment. We are so living in the past, so trying to redo something that's already being done. And I think this is where, having a spiritual understanding really helps, because I definitely have clients that can tend to stay in the past a lot of why did this happen? Why did they do that? Why did they get away with this behavior? And I get it. It's some narcissistic behavior is incredibly damaging and awful.
Hmm.
And this is where I just have to trust that as human beings, we just got this little tiny little peek hole that we're looking through. We see this one area of the story, one picture here, whereas there's this giant tapestry that's so beyond, our comprehension, where I feel that the universe is taking care of it all. And I do have to hand over any resentment and anger and trust that at the end of it all, it's all going to even out. And, or I might even be paying for a time when I may have cheated this other person in another lifetime, maybe. So maybe it's righting a wrong that I did. It helps me
Yeah.
let go and move on.
Well, one of the things, I mean, this is such a simple thing. And we talk, I mean, the vernacular is saying, when you get upset, count to 10 before you do anything to try and calm yourself down. I remember an experience, and this is similar but different, is that I was driving and somebody rear-ended me, and it was my new car, and I was immediately in rage and upset. But as soon as I opened the door and started to get out of the car to go behind to talk to them, something inside of me woke up. Like a part of me just said, hang on a second. Before you judge, you don't know what happened. Yeah, and this is actually before we had smartphones. People weren't usually being accused of looking at their phones when they should be driving. This is going back before that. And I remember it was like slow motion. I got out of the car, and as I walked towards the back of the car to set the damage out, a calm washed over me. Part of me just said, "Not, we're not doing this. We're not going to get into a big argument. We're going to fight and be against and right, wrong, or eye for an eye stuff." And the person in the other car was so guilt ridden by what they'd done. I didn't have to do anything anyway. I mean, they were so like forthcoming, like, let me take care of this and help you and everything else. If I'd gone back there in the rage that I carried, I might have put them on the defensive and they might have done nothing. So one of the
100.
gifts in this is and again, I put it up to, and this is after doing quite a lot of trainings and retreats and meditation programs and things. So part of me had this built in, but it wasn't awake yet. But that moment woke it up for me, where I just simply shifted from reaction into centeredness. And I remember vividly, because that was such a milestone experience for me back then. But recognizing how the gift we have, it is so true, is when we are centered, we're actually more powerful than when we're angry, because we have ability to move and change and do things. So one of the learnings from this is when somebody does something, quote, to us, and put that in quotes intentionally, we can, as you said, like jump in the mud and fight with them and be in the same place, but we're not able to think clearly at that point.
Mm-hmm.
One of the gifts we have is to step free and to be centered enough to go, okay, so how do I want to respond to what happened? Big question.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you brought up another good point. I mean, road rage. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. When we are in that reactive mode and sort of blinded by anger and feeling that we want justice and things like that, we sometimes don't know who we're dealing with. We really don't know who we're dealing with, and it's sort of better to just, as you say, take a breath, slow down, and is it really worth? You can have your feelings. Nobody's saying it's wrong to have those feelings of upset and injustice and whatever
Yeah.
it is, but it's the acting out on them and acting out with strangers that could be potentially dangerous. People with guns. We live in LA,
Yes.
or things like that. Like I remember a time when I don't know if I mentioned the story, but I was selling a car years and years ago, and the man came to pick up my car, and I lived in the remote Hollywood Hills at the time, and he said, "Can I take it overnight for my mechanic to have a look at?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I'll bring it. And so the next morning he brought it back, and he said, "Well, the mechanic said it was great, but on the way back, a can of paint fell off the back of a truck, and your car's covered in paint, and so obviously I don't want it now." I was like, first of all, I laughed. I thought, this is just too silly a story. And I walked outside, and my car is covered in what looked like black paint. And so I just was like, wow. I said, "So you're just giving me the car back, not in the condition you took it?" And he was like, "Yeah." I said, "Is there any part of you that feels slightly responsible for this? Would you like to contribute to maybe trying to fix the problem?" Anyway, this guy went ballistic. And he was like, on my property. I was living alone in the Hollywood Hills, and
Mhm.
he started going crazy. And I just said, "You know what?" I said, "Please leave my property." And he left, and then he kept calling me up and calling me the B word, and how dare I imply that he should have been responsible, and little woman, and let me talk to your husband. And didn't have a husband at the
Mhm.
time, but it
Right.
was really scary. And I remember thinking, and I didn't lose it with him. I just simply pointed out that I didn't think it was ethical. I certainly wouldn't have done that. I would have felt some responsibility. But it really showed me that you have to be careful, because this guy would not back off. And he said, "I know where you live. I can come back there unless I get an apology from you." I was like, oh my God, crazy. But yeah, be careful. That's the other thing is, revenge. It often can get into this secular, the eye for an eye. It's another eye for an eye, and you don't know where it's going to lead.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
mean, it can backfire, basically. Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. So, as well as damaging your relationships. But the other thing is, I mean, the beauty of it as well is being able to let go and move on, because we only have the present moment. So why keep reliving the past? Why not? When our minds are preoccupied about things that we feel were done to us, we're missing out on the absolute minute to minute beauty that we're surrounded in. I'm just looking out my window right now at gorgeous trees and blue skies, and thinking, oh my God, we live in heaven here. But if I was in the past thinking about injustices, I wouldn't even be able to see this. I wouldn't even be able
Exactly.
to appreciate it.
Yeah. I want to go back to something at the beginning about the Buddhist teaching. I remember the teaching, I don't know if it was from Brene Brown or maybe Byron Katie, was about the idea about that. No, Ramdas. From where it came from. But the similar teaching, but the idea being is that basically resentment being the idea of like taking poison, expecting the other person to die, is
Yeah.
so ineffective. And this thing is really, this is the premise, and this especially in relationships, is when we're upset by a partner, maybe they left us, maybe they did cheat on us, or maybe they just didn't show up the way we thought they would. It could be any different number of reasons we feel upset by what they didn't do or did do. We get that choice point, as you said so many times through this talk. And resentment is one of those really great indicators that we're off center. Because when we get resentful, it's this place where we basically judge the other person as doing something heinous or wrong, whatever it is, so that we can feel okay about ourselves for not being aware of the fact that we didn't notice it. It's this wonderful thing. It's this wonderful gift of being a way of just separating us from the upset. But it doesn't work because we're still carrying the upset. So if we're feeling resentful about somebody for something they did, like you were saying about having that place of being centered and in a way taking the high road, so to speak, it's about how do we take care of ourselves enough and start to be gentle enough. We talked about forgiveness probably a few months ago, about having forgiveness for this so that we can let us off the hook, because the resentment, as you said, they don't know it. They don't feel it. It's all inside of us. So we're
Mm-hmm.
feeling the pain. We're being toxic to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So this eye for an eye thing, where it's revenge or it's resentment or any of these things, is basically destroying our own self-support systems. So it's vital for us to remember in the moment that we have a choice,
Yeah.
that we can choose to center ourselves and love ourselves and forgive ourselves.
Yeah. And the other thing too that I think is really, really important as part of this is humility. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not that I use the word God or believe in a particularly traditional Christian faith in that way, or Catholic faith, but I do find myself saying a lot to myself there. But for the grace of God, go I, because really a lot of people do some really stupid things,
Yes, indeed.
unintentionally,
Hmm.
innocently. And I can be the first to put my hand up and go, me too. I've done things that I regret in the past. I've done things to hurt people that I've never intentionally set out to hurt them. Maybe I was immature, I was selfish, I was, whatever I was, hurt, reactive, all the things I can say. But I think that is to have that ability to just, before we judge another person, before we want to get into that sort of self-righteousness of we'll make them pay for it, to really just
Hmm.
say, hey, am I perfect? Have I not done things I regret that were stupid? And it just lowers the temperature immediately. It takes the sting out of it, unless you're a complete sort of sociopath and you can't
Well,
identify with, some of the things you've done. But
yes, indeed. There's another
people
conversation.
exactly. But most people could say, no, I'm nobody that was that. I should not be throwing stones in glass houses. And that's another way to just diffuse and to let go. And as I say, that and the spiritual understanding of, karma and knowing that it's all going to be taken care of for you. You do not have to be the one that's keeping score and making sure that, everybody's behaving right. There is a bigger picture. We're all here learning our lessons, and we're all, paying for those lessons on one level or another.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the, this this is a way of life, basically. It's a philosophy of how to live life in a more whole place. Independent relationships is true in life in general, because usually those things that trigger us oftentimes can be somebody we don't even know in the grocery store or on or on the freeway. So our opportunities to come back to center, to be self-honoring, to be humble in that place of going, you know what, whatever's going on for them, it's none of my business. I can take care of myself. I've made mistakes too. That humility, you're right, is so much of a key to being in a place that is more holistic and a fulfilling way of living life, frankly. And in relationship, the biggest, I think, opportunity we have in relationship to thrive is to be less attached to our ego. So being humble is one of those ways of doing it. So yeah, absolutely.
I just had a great thought for our next show.
Oh yeah, I had a feeling you would.
Yeah, that's unusual. I might have a hands. I was When you said about that, it might just be a stranger that triggers us. I just thought, oh my God, we've got to do a show on the shadow. That's
Oh.
exactly.
Haven't we done one already? I guess not.
I don't think. Well,
Well, let's do another
yeah,
one.
let's do another one. If we've both forgotten, it means it's time again.
Yes.
All right. Well, that was great for this week. Thank you so much, Barry, and I will see you again next week. And thank you,
Thank
everyone
you,
else.
Del.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Take care of yourselves. See you. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.